Conversation by Julie Benetti and Susan Barbaro is a production of EI Publishing in association with EI Alliance, copyright 2018. Visit eipublishing.com for more. Music for this series is courtesy of New Threads, copyright 2018, from their self-titled album, available now.
Here we are in our final podcast of A Man Thinketh. Like it or not, it's the final one. And this is too important to let go. We actually are incorporating a little bit of the Kybalion and mental gender. And this is, I don't even know where to go with it. We have been talking about masculine and femininity and talking about women and the lack of support women have. And we've really been doing a little bit of, I don't want to say bashing of women, but kind of more of like, I don't want to hear about the, it's funny. We listened to I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar by Helen Redding. Beautiful song, but it's about pain. And it's about a woman becoming strong through pain. And I'm not denying that many women have become strong through that. But I think the problem lies when they hold on to it, and that defines them. Being the victim defines them. And there's in no situation where a victim who lives in that victimhood ever becomes strong. Right. And the reason that I say the things that I do about the Me Too movement, about all this other stuff, is that, I really, let me put it this way. I'm trying to find being a woman is not a defect. Being a woman has some huge gifts within it. And I have made it part of, one of my, I'm going to say it, goals, is to find out what that specific, what that is, define it a little bit better. Not because I want to define it, but because I'm a woman, you're a woman. We're not here as we're not women by mistake. Right. We specifically came here, and I want to really tap into that resource, and I want to move as a woman into whatever sphere I choose to, be it politics, be it, corporations, be it, in the arts, whatever it is. I don't want to be a woman who can camouflage as a man. Right. And I think there's something to it. And that's why I'm going one step further.
And the expression of this is raising the volume on this aspect of being a woman. And it's the totality that aligns with, as James Allen says, in As a Man Thinketh, writing it as a man when he expresses thoughts, and thoughts going from seeds to actions to blooming into, your joys or your heartaches. And it's combining that with the Kybalion, and the Kybalion telling us in its expression of gender, in one of its rules there, is that the normal method is for the masculine and feminine principles in a person's mind to coordinate and act harmoniously in conjunction with each other. And that's what we're trying to raise the volume on, and that's what we're trying to move forward to in purpose.
And so, to add to that, it does talk about the masculine principle and the feminine principle. And this is just our start, because this is where we're going with it. So the first thing is to undo the whole idea of being a victim. Right. That doesn't serve you. Whatever occurred, we've all had issues happen, and, there's not that we're dismissing it. But you need to move to the other side of it. You need to move to it, however you do it. Because if you don't, your power is with someone else. Right. And I'm all about embracing your own power and coming to that spot. And actually, that's what Helen Reddy, because we just looked up the lyrics, that's a little of what she says. Talks about the pain that she's been through, and that she's been on the floor and, dragging herself across. But she's, I am woman, hear me roar. And that's a great song, yet nobody's talking about that now. And so, when I look at, because now we're going into the Kybalion, and it really talks about the feminine principle. It talks about it receives messages from outside. It's able to I always kind of look at it as more cooperative. It's more softer, and it's more in the receiving mode. And I think the woman principle, if you look at that, and of course I'm jumping around, I'm sorry. Then the male principle talks about projection. That's, when they talk about thoughts, it's the male principle that projects the thought onto the female principle, because whether you're a guy or a woman, you have both principles within you. And so in the Kybalion, it says that the male principle within a person projects a thought, and the female principle within a person is what receives the thought. And so I would like to think that, okay, so that's how it's being projected and discussed here. But just because you're able to receive things, I'm going to have to trace back again, because it also says in telepathy, if you go into the receiving, well, the feminine principle is also what's open to what comes in. And you said earlier that energy is thought projection, right?
Right.
If I say that correctly. So by default, the feminine side of us is what's able to access the energy.
Right.
And let's face it, ladies, the energy is where the power of everything lies.
And that's what we said in our last podcast with James Allen about the energy is always of thought.
Exactly. And if the feminine principle in the Kybalion discusses that the female principle is able to access the energy and receive it, well, then wouldn't that mean that we have the ability to work from a much more powerful position?
Right. And it expressly states that it grows and develops, and in time it kind of creates, an offspring of that energy of thought and of what it receives. And, from that standpoint, when you combine together the Kybalion with As a Man Thinketh, I mean, it really is, the power of your thoughts and being limited by the thoughts that you choose.
And then, of course, that's the goal a little bit, and I know I'm going to keep using the word because it's going to trigger you, but that's a little bit of the goal of us looking at some of the ancient texts. It's not to look at each one, but then to start looking them in conjunction with each other.
Right.
And to go even a little bit further. And so I don't have the answers. And again, this is our discussion, and we're having these discussions kind of online to bring others into it, because this is something that, it's needed now. I would love nothing more than to have a woman president. I would love nothing more to have women in power, but I'm going to say it because I'm a woman. I can. I don't want the wrong woman.
Right.
I've worked for women who are, I'm not going to make this explicit, but are screwed up. They're some of them are the nastiest, most unsupportive people I have ever had the displeasure of knowing. That said, there's a ton of women out there that are amazing, and they're more quiet, and they're not out there whining, and they're not out there doing things. And that's what I want to tap into. I want to turn every woman that hears this into that. Move with power, not with trying to be a guy, not trying to screw the next woman because you got screwed. That's not what I'm interested in doing, and that's not who I'm interested in talking with. Those people are not supportive. Those people are not going to move forward. And they're the ones that are trying to make themselves be the woman who has managed to live in a man's world. I want to be a woman that is a full, complete woman and can move in any world as who I am.
And it's funny, we in our conversation of this, we dabbled a little bit earlier, and I brought up, in the UK, I mean, they've had Margaret Thatcher, they've had prime ministers, and like or not, whatever the political policies are, these are still strong women. And even in Germany and in New Zealand, you have leaders who are women in strong positions, and they're in other arenas. And we're not just talking, from the element of the US. It's funny because even when you think about, not to think about, but when you go into the aspect of celebrity and how easy it is for everybody to listen to celebrities, whether they be male or female or whatever, and to listen to their voice, often, I've heard in the sense that, that doesn't exist in the UK because they have a queen. And because that kind of situation that they deal with, they don't, they have royalty and they have this situation going on. And perhaps I'm not explaining it correctly in the manner that I've tried to understand it, because I am from the US. Yet, in that expression of looking at a woman and looking at gender, I mean, it aligns perfectly in what we've been talking about with the energy of thought and the Kybalion, and how we're a combination of both our male and female, and raising the volume on being supportive and empowered by the female aspect rather than in the victim sensation of it is so important.
And so the other part of this is, when we look at some of the older texts, they're written by men. They're written about men. And it's very clear that men and women, although are created equal, they are not equal. Men have attributes that are different than women, and women have attributes that are different than men. And it's not about negating a part of you to fit in with something else. Like, and I don't want to make generalizations. Yet, if you just go to the energy, and that's really, I think, what we're focusing on, is it talks about in the Kybalion the two genders, and that, of course, they use the male gender, and you could almost reclassify and change any of the words you want, because what's male, what's female, yin, yang, you can change it any way you want, and it talks about many people don't access their masculine principle in the way of impressing their ideas upon others, meaning that they are receiving the ideas as would be displayed through the feminine principle, but the male principle of what they call willpower, of doing the other part of it. When I was expressing to you, when I get an idea and I think, oh my God, this is a horrible idea, I turn around and I say, or this is not a good thought. I have to make the conscious effort of saying, that's not true. And I talked about that in the other podcast, that I say, this is not true. I know the truth. This is the truth. This is the way I live my life, or this is how the people I love are. These other thoughts are not real. I'm not gonna entertain them. And I kind of flush them down the toilet. Like, that's not